The Rick and Morty Season 9 finale is one of the show's darkest episodes because it strips away the usual sci-fi spectacle and asks a painful question: can Morty ever escape becoming like Rick? At first, the episode seems to be about funeral hopping and alternate realities, but by the end, it becomes a story about idealized families, trauma, and accepting painful truths. Morty spends almost the entire episode chasing a better life, only to discover that perfection is just another illusion. Morty's decision to attend alternate versions of his own funeral begins as simple curiosity. Watching families grieve for alternate Mortys makes him realize something he rarely experiences in his own reality: people openly expressing love. That eventually leads him to Mort's universe. And like his own dysfunctional household, the Smith family appears almost perfect. Jerry is patient and supportive, Beth is loving, Rick gave up drinking, the family communicates honestly, nobody is constantly risking each other's lives. For someone raised by the most emotionally unavailable Rick imaginable, the family feels almost unreal. Even more importantly, Morty's Rick dismisses every emotional problem as weakness, while Mort's family welcomes him without asking for anything in return. It's exactly the life Morty has secretly wanted. The biggest twist comes when Morty discovers that even the seemingly perfect family was built on denial. Jerry initially looks like everything Morty wished his own father could be. He teaches him practical skills, he cooks with him, he tells him he loves him, he makes Morty feel safe, but little by little, Jerry becomes possessive. His insistence that Morty destroy the portal gun sounds loving at first. Eventually, it becomes obvious it isn't about helping Morty heal, it's about making sure Morty never leaves. When Jerry repeatedly calls him Mort instead of Morty, the illusion completely collapses. He never truly accepted Morty as another person. He simply wanted a replacement for the son he lost. The discovery of Mort's diary confirms everything. Mort had written about years of unbearable pressure from his father. Jerry pushed him to constantly become stronger. He never accepted his son's limits. Mort even planned to run away before dying. In other words, Jerry had unknowingly been repeating the same cycle of emotional control all along. He loved his son, but that love became suffocating. The perfect father Morty believed he'd finally found was simply another broken parent trying to heal through someone else. The episode's other fascinating character is Professor Sanchez. And like every other Rick we've met, he abandoned his destructive lifestyle and built an ordinary life through recovery. For most of the episode, he represents hope. He proves Rick isn't genetically destined to become an alcoholic genius incapable of love. Instead, he chose accountability. He accepted responsibility for destroying his family, he rebuilt his life, he even found love again. In many ways, Professor Sanchez becomes the opposite of Rick C-137. He's what Rick could have become had he stopped running from his pain. Ironically, Morty is the one who unintentionally destroys that stability. When Morty reveals that Diane disappears across every universe regardless of Rick's choices, Professor Sanchez experiences enormous relief. For years, he believed alcoholism alone had cost him Diane. Now he learns something shocking. It wasn't entirely his fault. Although the revelation frees him from guilt, it also removes the emotional burden that kept him sober. Once the Portal project succeeds, Professor Sanchez begins celebrating. Almost immediately, he reaches for alcohol again. He even jokes that drinking is responsible for all his scientific breakthroughs. It's funny on the surface, but tragic underneath. The episode suggests recovery isn't a permanent destination. It's something that requires constant effort. The moment Rick convinces himself he's escaped responsibility, he starts becoming the Rick we recognize. The finale reaches its emotional breaking point when Jerry finally finds Morty. Everyone's fears collide at once. Jerry refuses to let Morty leave. Professor Sanchez insists the portal works. Beth intervenes. A single gunshot enters the unstable portal. Everything spirals into catastrophe. The result is horrifying. Professor Sanchez dies, Jerry dies, Summer is torn apart, Beth loses her entire family before taking her own life, Morty watches another universe collapse because he entered it. It's one of the bleakest endings the series has ever delivered. Morty immediately blames himself. After all, none of these people would have died if he hadn't come into their lives. But the tragedy reflects a recurring theme throughout Rick and Morty. Morty didn't create these people's flaws. Jerry's obsession already existed. Professor Sanchez's addiction never completely disappeared. The unstable portal technology wasn't ready. Morty merely became the catalyst that forced everyone's hidden weaknesses into the open. One of the smartest narrative choices is returning to the estate sale from the opening scene. Once again, alternate Ricks and Mortys rush into the dead family's home. They place sticky notes on furniture, they argue over gadgets, they ignore the horrifying tragedy that just happened. We have now witnessed every heartbreaking moment leading to those deaths. The scavengers have no idea. To them, it's simply another universe, another opportunity. The scene perfectly captures the show's philosophy. In an infinite multiverse, individual lives become insignificant. Every tragedy is just background noise to someone else. It's a chilling reminder that the multiverse doesn't naturally assign meaning to anyone's suffering. After everything he's witnessed, Morty immediately tells his own Beth that he loves her. Her awkward reaction says everything. This family still struggles with emotional honesty. Nobody knows how to respond to genuine affection. Yet Morty no longer expects perfection. He simply appreciates that they're alive. It's a small moment, but one of the episode's most meaningful. The final conversation between Rick and Morty completely redefines their relationship. Instead of dragging Morty into another dangerous adventure, Rick wakes him simply to show off the repaired motorcycle and tells Morty to take control while he'll guide him. Then comes the surprising exchange. Rick tells Morty, "I'm your dad." Morty says, "Yeah, you're my dad." And Rick says, "Yeah, you're my son." On the surface, the dialogue sounds strange because Rick is Morty's grandfather. Emotionally, however, it makes perfect sense. Rick has effectively raised Morty through countless adventures, for better and for worse. Morty has looked to Rick for guidance more often than he ever has Jerry. For perhaps the first time, Rick openly acknowledges the emotional bond he's always hidden behind sarcasm and cynicism. He isn't claiming to replace Jerry, he's admitting that their relationship has become something much closer to a father and son than either of them has ever wanted to admit. The ending can be interpreted in two different ways. The more optimistic reading is that Morty finally realizes there is no perfect universe. Every reality contains broken people. Mort's family looked ideal until Jerry's trauma surfaced. Professor Sanchez appeared healed until addiction returned. No alternate world can permanently solve Morty's unhappiness. Rather than endlessly searching for a better family, Morty chooses the deeply flawed one he already has. For the first time, he appreciates Rick, Beth, Summer, and Jerry, not because they're perfect, but because they're his family. The darker interpretation is more tragic. Throughout the episode, every person Morty grows attached to dies. Every attempt to find happiness ends in catastrophe. By the end, Morty may genuinely believe that he destroys everything he touches. Returning to Rick isn't an act of hope, it's surrender. Rick's always believed relationships eventually end in pain, and Morty may now be accepting that worldview himself. When Rick calls him my son, Morty quietly accepts it because he sees himself becoming exactly like Rick, someone convinced that closeness inevitably leads to loss. Both readings fit the episode well, which is what makes the finale so emotionally effective. Whether Morty has finally found peace or simply given up searching for something better remains intentionally ambiguous. The post-credit scene shifts away from Morty and returns to the ongoing mystery surrounding Mr. Poopy Butthole. Amy, Mrs. Poopy Butthole, and a team of scientists imprison the imposter who replaced her husband and attempt to use his DNA to create a multiversal waypoint capable of locating the real Mr. Poopy Butthole. The imposter even breaks the fourth wall, commenting on the season itself before the experiment begins. Just as the machine activates its fourth-dimensional engines, it explodes, leaving Amy, the scientist, and the imposter's fate unknown. The scene serves as a teaser that the search for the real Mr. Poopy Butthole and the show's exploration of multiversal travel is far from over, setting up another unresolved storyline for the future.